For 50 years. The stars were silent. No Terran voice crossed the void. No ship bore Earth's banner. The galaxy whispered, wondered, and finally forgot. But silence is not surrender. Now, in the cold reaches of forgotten space, a beacon pulses, faint, ancient, dying. And with it comes the first echo of a name the galaxy dared believe extinct: humanity. And they're not coming back to talk. When Earth went dark, the galaxy had grown quiet in ways that most species found comfortable. Trade routes flowed smoothly. Between the major powers, disputes were settled through careful diplomacy, and the great war machines that had once burned across star systems now gathered dust in forgotten shipyards. For 50 standard years, this peace had held, built on treaties, mutual benefit, and one crucial factor that few dared to speak aloud: the humans were gone. The Terran Republic had simply vanished from galactic affairs. No dramatic exit, no final ultimatum, no burning of bridges. One day their ambassadors had packed their belongings. Their trade ships had completed their final runs, and their military vessels had turned toward the small yellow star they called home. The last official. Communication from Earth had been brief and formal. The Terran Republic hereby withdraws from all galactic treaties and organizations. We wish all species prosperity and peace. That had been 50 years ago. Since then, Sol System had become a ghost story whispered in diplomatic halls. Long-range sensors showed no activity beyond the asteroid belt. Communication attempts received. No response. The few brave or foolish traders who ventured toward human space found nothing but automated warning buoys that politely but firmly requested they turn back. Most assumed the humans had finally destroyed themselves, as violent species often did. Others believed they had simply retreated to their home world to live out their days in isolation. Captain Sarah-chan didn't think about humans much as she guided the research vessel Meridian through the outer regions of the Kepler sector. Her mixed crew of Zephyrians, Altarians, and Centauri scientists were focused on their mission, mapping gravitational anomalies in this rarely traveled region of space. Chun herself was one of the few remaining human Altarian hybrids, her grandmother, having been part of the last generation born before the Great Withdrawal. "Captain," called out Dr. Vex, the ship's chief science officer, his blue-scaled head turning from his sensor array. "We're detecting something unusual. Artificial origin. Definitely not natural phenomenon." Chun floated over to the science station, her zero-gravity movements graceful despite the bulky research suit. "Show me." The holographic display materialized between them, showing a faint energy signature roughly 2 light hours away. The pattern was regular, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. "It's broadcasting," Dr. Vex continued, his membrane ears twitching with excitement. A very low power, very old by the signal degradation, but still active after ... calculating. Approximately 12,000 years. 12,000. Chin's dark eyes widened. That predated most known civilizations. Any idea what species? "Running. Comparison against all known signal architectures," replied Arya, the ship's AI, her synthesized voice carrying a hint of curiosity that Chun had never quite gotten used to. "No matches in our database. However, the mathematical structure suggests high intelligence and sophisticated technology." Chan stared at the display, her mind racing. Discovery of an unknown ancient civilization would be the find of a lifetime. But something about the signal's pattern nagged at her. It wasn't just regular, it was desperate, urgent, like a voice calling across the void. "It's a distress beacon," she said quietly. Dr. Vex's scales rippled, a sign of Zephyrian concern. "Captain, if this beacon has been broadcasting for 12 millennia, whatever sent it is certainly ... dead. I know." Chun pushed off from the console, floating toward the main viewport where stars wheeled slowly past. "But someone built something that could call for help across 12,000 years. Don't you want to know who?" The debate that followed lasted 3 hours. The Meridian was Research vessel equipped with advanced sensors and a small but capable crew. They weren't explorers or first contact specialists. Dr. Vex argued for reporting the discovery to the Galactic Research Council and letting them handle it. The Centauri twins, Kai and Cole, worried about potential dangers from such ancient technology. Only Arya seemed genuinely enthusiastic about investigating Dot in the end. Chun's curiosity won out. She authorized a course change toward the signal source, a decision that would change everything. The beacon source was a dead system. Its star long since collapsed into a white dwarf that cast eerie shadows across empty worlds. The signal originated from the fourth planet, a frozen ball of rock and ice that had once orbited in the habitable zone. As the meridian approached, their sensors revealed the ruins of a once great civilization. Dot cities covered the planet's surface, their spires reaching toward space, even in death. But it was what they found in orbit that took Chun's breath away. A massive space station, easily 50 kilometers across, still maintaining perfect position despite the eons that had passed. Life support systems are still functional in the central sections, Arya reported as they docked with the ancient structure. Atmosphere is breathable for most crew members. However, I'm detecting no life signs. The airlock opened with a whisper of equalizing pressure. Chun led the away team through corridors that stretched beyond their light's reach, their footsteps echoing in spaces designed for beings far taller than any of them. The architecture was beautiful in its alien way, all flowing curves and organic, shapes that seemed to grow rather than be built. They found the control center at the station's heart, a vast chamber dominated by a crystalline structure that pulsed with soft light. As they approached, the crystal's glow intensified, and suddenly the air filled with images, sounds, and something that might have been emotion. The beings who built this place called themselves the Kithara. They had been tall, graceful creatures, with 4 arms and faces that spoke of ancient wisdom. Their civilization had spanned dozens of star systems, their technology bordering on the miraculous. They had been artists, philosophers, scientists, and dreamers, and they had been completely annihilated. The crystal showed them everything in the final days. The enemy had come from the void between galaxies, machines of impossible sophistication and single-minded purpose. They consumed everything organic, breaking down matter at the molecular level to fuel their endless expansion. The Kithara had called them the Devourers, and despite all their wisdom and technology, they had been helpless against them. "We send this beacon into the future," the final message played, translated by systems that recognized the universal language of mathematics and desperation. "To whoever finds it, know this: they are still out there. They sleep now, having consumed all they could reach, but they will wake. They will come again. We have hidden what we could, prepared what warnings we could manage. Find the others. Unite them. Be ready." The crystal dimmed, its 12,000-year vigil finally complete. In the silence that followed, Chun found herself thinking about home, about the star system that had gone dark half a century ago, about the species that had simply vanished from galactic affairs. "Captain," Dr. Vex whispered, his voice tight, with fear. "If these Devourers are still out there, then the galaxy needs to know." Chun turned from the crystal, her jaw set with determination. "Arya, prepare a full data package. Everything we've learned here. And plot a course for Sol System." The silence stretched long enough that Chin wondered if the AI had malfunctioned. Finally, Arya spoke, her voice carrying an odd note of something that sounded almost like relief. "Course plotted, Captain. Estimated arrival in Sol System, 14 standard days. Should I prepare standard first contact protocols?" Chun looked around at her crew, at the alien ruins surrounding them, at the warning that had waited 12 millennia to be heard. "No," she said quietly. "Prepare for going home." As the Meridian departed the dead system, carrying news that would shake the galaxy to its foundations, none of them noticed the faint energy signatures beginning to stir in the deep void between stars. The beacon had done more than warn about the devourei dot it had woken them up. What hunts in the dark, the journey to Sol System gave Captain Chun plenty of time to study the Kithara data and contemplate what they might find when they arrived. The information contained in the crystal was vast, detailing not just the Devourers, but the desperate preparations the Kithara had made in their final years. Hidden caches of technology, warning beacons scattered across the galaxy, and most importantly, detailed scans of Devourer technology and tactics. Dr. Vex had spent days analyzing the enemy's structure. They're not truly alive, he reported too. The assembled crew, his blue scales pale with exhaustion. They're machine intelligences, but ancient beyond measure. Each unit is linked to a central consciousness that spans multiple star systems. They learn, adapt, and improve with every civilization they consume. How do they consume civilizations? Asked Kei, one of the Centauri twins. Her crystalline features showed the stress they all felt. Complete molecular disassembly, Arya answered, her voice clinical but somehow sad. They break down all organic matter and many inorganic materials to fuel their expansion. Nothing is wasted. Everything becomes part of their collective. Chen stared at the tactical displays showing Devourer ship configurations. They were beautiful in their terrible efficiency, flowing forms that seemed more grown than built. Each vessel was a perfect fusion of offense, defense, and processing capability. Worst of all, they appeared to be completely immune to the energy weapons that formed the backbone of galactic military doctrine. The Kithara tried everything, Dr. Vex continued. Plasma cannons, particle beams, antimatter missiles, even exotic weapons we don't have names for. Nothing worked. The Devourers absorbed the energy and used it to strengthen themselves. So how do we fight them? Chun asked the question they were all thinking. The answer came from an unexpected source. As they approached the edge of Sol System, their sensors detected something that shouldn't have been there. A massive space station, clearly of human construction, positioned at the system's heliopause. It was followed by another, then another, until their screens showed dozens of installations forming a defensive perimeter around human space. This is Meridian requesting permission to enter Sol System, Chun broadcast on standard frequencies. We carry urgent information regarding a galactic threat. The response came immediately, crisp and professional. Meridian, this is Admiral Marcus Steele, Terran Defense Corps. You are cleared for escort to Earth Station Alpha. Welcome home, Captain Chun. Chan's breath caught. Someone knew she was coming. Someone had been watching. The escort that met them was unlike any human vessel. In the historical records, the ships were sleek, angular, and radiated a sense of barely contained power that made Chen's hybrid senses tingle. As they approached Earth, she gasped at what she saw. The planet was surrounded by orbital installations on a scale that dwarfed anything in galactic space. Massive shipyards stretched between Earth and Luna. Wild defensive satellites formed geometric patterns that spoke of mathematical precision and overwhelming firepower. This wasn't the work of 50 years. This was the result of centuries of planning and preparation. Earth Station Alpha was a marvel of engineering, a rotating city in space that housed millions. Admiral Steele met them at the docking bay, a tall man with silver hair and eyes that held depths Chun couldn't fathom. Behind him stood a delegation of humans whose presence suggested they had been expecting this moment for a very long time. You found one of the beacons, Steele said without preamble as they walked through corridors that hummed with advanced technology. The Kithara warning. We've been waiting for this day since the withdrawal. You knew? Chun's voice rose in disbelief. You knew about the Devourers and you said nothing? We knew, confirmed Dr. Elena Gasquez, a small woman with intense dark eyes who had been introduced as Earth's chief xenotechnologist, known for 73 years. That's why we left. The briefing room they entered contained the largest holographic display Shin had ever seen. As they took their seats, the display activated, showing star charts that covered not just their galaxy, but several neighboring ones. Red indicators marked devourer activity spanning millions of years, a pattern of consumption that had left entire galactic arms barren of life. In 2387, one of our deep space exploration vessels encountered devourer remnants in the Magellanic Clouds. Admiral Steele began. We learned what they were, what they did, and most importantly, that they were still active. They were working their way through the neighboring galaxies, and eventually they would come here. So you abandoned us, Chun said, anger creeping into her voice. You left the galaxy to face this alone. We left to prepare, Dr. Vasquez corrected gently. The galactic powers were too comfortable, too set in their ways. They would never have believed the threat until it was too late. We needed time to develop new weapons, new strategies, new ways of thinking about warfare. The display changed, showing technical schematics that made Chun's engineering background sing with appreciation. Human technology had advanced by centuries in just 50 years, but more than that, it had evolved in entirely new directions. Energy weapons are useless against them, Admiral Steele continued. But kinetic weapons, properly applied, can disrupt their molecular cohesion. Quantum entanglement can interfere with their collective consciousness. And most importantly, their adaptation protocols have weaknesses that can be exploited. You've been planning a war for 50 years, Chun said, understanding flooding through her. We've been planning to save the galaxy, Dr. Vasquez replied. The question is, are we ready? The answer came sooner than anyone expected. Alarms began sounding throughout the station, their urgent tones cutting through the briefing. Admiral Steele was on his feet instantly, his hand moving to a communication device at his collar. Report, he ordered. Admiral, this is Deep Space. Monitor 7. We have multiple contacts entering the outer system. Configuration unknown, but they match Kithara descriptions of Devourer scout vessels. Chun felt her blood turn to ice. The beacon hadn't just warned them about the Devourers. By activating after 12,000 years, it had sent a signal that they could track. How many? Admiral Steele asked, his voice deadly calm. 17 confirmed, possibly more following. Estimated arrival at Earth orbit in 6 hours. The Admiral looked around the room at the assembled faces, human and alien alike. Gentlemen, ladies, it appears our preparation time has ended. Captain Chun, I hope you're ready to see what humans have learned about war. As alerts echoed through Earth Station Alpha and across the solar system, millions of humans began moving. With the precision of a species that had spent 50 years preparing for this exact moment. Hidden shipyards opened their bays, revealing vessels that defied conventional understanding of spacecraft design. Weapons platforms that had masqueraded as asteroids powered up their systems. And deep in Earth's oceans, cities that had been hidden for decades began to rise. The galaxy was about to learn why Earth had gone silent. They were about to discover what happened when you gave a species of deathworlders 50 years to prepare for the ultimate war. When deathworlders unite, the first engagement lasted exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds. The Devourer Scouts, 17 crystalline nightmares, each the size of a city, entered the outer solar system expecting to find the usual collection of organic prey huddled around their parent star. Instead, they found humanity ready and waiting. Captain Chun watched from Earth Station, Alpha's command center, as the battle unfolded on tactical displays that tracked movements faster than her eyes could follow. The human fleet that rose to meet the Scouts was unlike anything in galactic records. The ships moved like living things, their hulls rippling with adaptive armor that shifted and flowed to deflect incoming attacks. Kinetic bombardment pattern Delta 7, Admiral Steele ordered, his voice cutting through the controlled chaos of the command center. All units, remember your training. These things learn fast, so don't give them time to adapt. The Devourer. Scouts opened fire first, their weapons tearing space itself with beams of exotic energy that had obliterated countless civilizations. But the human ships didn't try to block or absorb the attacks. Instead, they danced. Chen gasped as she watched the human vessels move through space, like dancers avoiding raindrops. Their movements so precise and coordinated that they seemed to know where each attack would be before it was fired. This wasn't just advanced technology. It was something else entirely. Quantum precognition, Dr. Vasquez explained, noting Chun's expression. We can't predict what they'll do, but we can calculate probability matrices and position ourselves in the statistically safest locations. It gives us a few seconds of advantage. Those few seconds were all humanity needed. As the Devour scouts fired their reality-warping weapons at empty space, human ships struck back with something the ancient machines had never encountered. Pure kinetic force delivered with impossible precision. The weapons weren't energy beams or exotic particles. They were pieces of matter accelerated to near-light speed, guided by quantum computers that could calculate trajectories through 11 dimensions. When they struck the Devourer scouts, the results were devastating. First, kill confirmed, came a voice from the fleet. Scout vessel designation Alpha 7 is fragmenting. Molecular cohesion disrupted across 47% of its structure. One by one, the scouts fell. But even as they died, Chun could see them adapting, learning, sending data back to whatever vast intelligence controlled them. By the time the last scout was destroyed, they had begun to develop countermeasures. That was just the beginning, Admiral Steele said grimly, as the all-clear sounded. And now they know we're here, and they know we can hurt them. The real fleet won't be far behind. He was right. Within hours, long-range sensors detected the approaching wave. Not 17 scouts, but thousands of vessels ranging from small interceptors to massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed Earth's moon. The main Devourer fleet was coming, and behind it, the sensor readings suggested something even larger was moving through the void. Estimated arrival? Admiral Steele asked. 72 hours. Sir, an admiral, there's something else. We're receiving distress signals from 17 different star systems. The Devourers aren't just coming for us. They're attacking everywhere at once. Chan felt her heart sink as the tactical display showed the scope of the attack. The Altarian, Confederation, the Zephyrian Trade Union, the Crystal Courts of Centauri Prime, even the proud warrior clans of the hegemony. All were sending desperate pleas for help as Devourer fleets emerged from the void to consume their worlds. They're using our beacon discovery against us, she realized. They know that someone found the Kithara warning, so they're launching a preemptive strike against every major civilization. Admiral Steele nodded grimly, which means we have a choice. We can defend Earth and let the galaxy burn, or we can do what humans have always done when the odds are impossible, which is, we fight for everyone. The next 72 hours transformed human space into a hive of activity that beggared description. Ships emerged from hidden bases scattered throughout the outer system, each one a masterpiece of human engineering adapted for war against an enemy that learned from every encounter. But more than ships, humanity revealed something that made Chun's hybrid heart swell with pride. They had not spent 50 years preparing to hide. They had spent 50 years preparing to save everyone. The fleet that departed. Sol system was vast beyond imagination. Thousands of vessels organized into battle groups that moved with the precision of neural networks. Each ship connected to every other through quantum entanglement communications that worked faster than light itself. At its head flew the Vanguard, Admiral Steele's flagship, a vessel that looked less built than grown. Its hull incorporating technologies that Chun's scientific mind could barely comprehend, but the fleet didn't head directly for Earth's defense. Instead, it split into 17 different formations, each one racing toward a different star system under attack. Chun found herself aboard the Vanguard, leading the group racing toward Altarian space where her grandmother's people were making their final stand. This is impossible, Dr. Vex muttered as he studied the tactical projections. We can't be in 17 places at once. Even if we save one system, the others will fall. We're not going to be in 17 places at once, Admiral Steele replied. his eyes never leaving this strategic display. We're going to be in 17 places, and then everywhere else they show up simultaneously. The answer became clear when they arrived at Alteria Prime. The planet was surrounded by a devourer fleet that was systematically breaking down the orbital defenses, preparing to begin the planetary consumption process. But as the human fleet emerged from quantum-fold space, something unprecedented happened. Every human ship split, not physically, but through quantum superposition technology that Chun hadn't even known was theoretically possible. Each vessel existed in multiple states simultaneously, allowing the fleet to engage enemies across 17 different star systems at the exact same moment. The battle that followed would be remembered as the turning point in galactic history. Humanity didn't just fight the Devourers, they outthought them. Every time the ancient machines adapted to a human tactic, the humans shifted to something completely different. Kinetic weapons gave way to gravitational manipulators. Energy shields were replaced by phase shift technology that made ships briefly intangible. Most devastatingly of all, Dr. Vasquez deployed her masterpiece, quantum viruses that spread through the Devourer collective consciousness like wildfire, forcing them to fight their own programming. System by system, the tide turned. The Altarians watched in amazement as human ships materialized out of nowhere to drive off attackers that had seemed unstoppable. The Zephyrians saw their ancient enemies flee before weapons that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. The crystal courts witnessed the impossible, beings they had dismissed as primitive deathworlders wielding technology that bordered on magic. But the greatest battle was yet to come. As the Devourer fleets retreated from the 17 systems, they converged on a single point, the Nexus Gate, the galaxy's most important hyperspace junction. If it fell, the galaxy would be cut in half, and the Devourers could consume each, half at their leisure. The human fleet that arrived at the Nexus was battered but unbroken. They found themselves facing not just the retreating forces, but the Devourer primary consciousness itself, a structure so vast it barely fit within the solar system. A machine intelligence that had consumed 1,000 galaxies and learned from the death of countless civilizations. All units, Admiral Steele broadcast as the final battle began. Remember what we're fighting for. Remember why we spent 50 years in the dark. We are the children of Earth, the sons and daughters of a world that tried to kill us every day we lived on it. And we are not alone. As if in response to his words, ships began emerging from hyperspace around the Nexus. Not human ships, but vessels of every species in the galaxy. The Altarians, the Zephyrians, the Centauri, the Hegemony Warriors, even species that Chun had never heard of, all converging on this point to make their stand alongside humanity. The galaxy had awakened. And when the final calculations were made, when the quantum viruses had done their work and the collective consciousness of the Devourers began to fracture and fail, it was not human weapons that delivered the killing blow. It was Hope. The beacon. That had waited 12,000 years to deliver its warning had become something else entirely. Fed by the quantum networks linking every ship in the combined fleet, enhanced by technologies that bridged the gap between matter and consciousness. It transformed from a cry of despair into a song of defiance that resonated across dimensions. The Devourers, ancient and vast and terrible, discovered something they had never encountered in a million years of consumption. A prey species that refused to be prey, supported by an alliance that refused to break, defending a galaxy that refused to die. In the end, they simply ... stopped. The great machine consciousness that had devoured galaxies fell silent, its constituent parts drifting powerless through space, no longer connected to the vast network that had driven them across the cosmos. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, watching as human and alien ships worked together to salvage what could be saved and ensure that the Devourer technology could never again be turned toward conquest. Around her, species that had barely acknowledged each other's existence were forming new alliances, new friendships, new possibilities. So what happens now? She asked Admiral Steele as Earth came into view, still surrounded by its incredible defensive installations. Now we rebuild, he replied. But this time, we do it together. The galaxy has learned what humans can do when we have time to prepare. But more importantly, humans have learned what we can accomplish when we're not fighting alone. The beacon that had called across 12,000 years finally fell silent, its vigil complete. But in its place, a new signal began to broadcast, carried by the quantum networks that now linked every world in the galaxy. Not a warning this time, but a promise. We are here. We remember. We stand together, and in the vast spaces between the stars, other intelligences that might have looked upon the galaxy as prey heard that signal and chose to seek other hunting grounds. Because the galaxy was no longer a collection of isolated civilizations waiting to be consumed. It was home, and it was defended by the children of Earth who had never learned how to surrender and never would.